Begin today the Gemara on Daf Nun Aleph from Beis, about 15 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. So it says over here, the Gemara quotes from the Mishnah. Ava olav arishoim v'loy kiso. The Mishnah was speaking about a bird that belongs to Shutfin. The Mishnah on Amar Aleph, a bird of Shutfin, and one of the Shutfin used it, and he finished, and the second person used it, v'hasheni, and the like you saw, and he didn't cover it. So then the Mishnah says Hasheni chayiv. The second person is chayiv, the first person is not chayiv. Okay, so the Gemara now asks on this, V'rishoin me'emes miftar. When did we say that the first one that used it and didn't cover it, so he's going to be pater, and it's only the second one that used it is going to be chayiv? So the reason the Gemara is asking this is because obviously, in a case where the first person used it and he stam didn't cover it, and then the second person came along, the other partner, and also didn't use it, they should both be responsible. Why do we say that no, dafke the second person is responsible and not the first person? So the Gemara brings the machlokes. Rabbe v'Rav Yosef damrit havai mishmei de Rabbe Bava Kama. The Oma mishmei de Rab Mani. So there was a machlokes as follows. What Rab Mani said about this case here. Chad Omar, one of them said mishmanichai mishtamish. That as long as the first partner, he finished using it, and he left it uncovered because the second partner came along to use the bar. So if the second one is coming along to use it, so it's not going to be his responsibility to cover it. Another one said, when is the first one not responsible? It's not enough that he left it uncovered because the second person was coming to use it. He left the second person using it. It's because he gave him the cover. Dalya means the cover. Because he gave him the cover of the bar, so he gave it over to him. He appointed him, he designated that he should be the one that's going to cover it. So then the first one's going to be potter. Says the Gemara Ketanoi. So these two opinions, Rabbi and Rav Yosef, it's a machlokes Tanoi. Because the Brisa says, Amad l'mayim min haboyer, a person is drawing water from a pit. Uba chaverei v'amaloi hanachli v'ani ad l'mayim. Leave it open for me, and I'm also going to draw water. So you left it to the second person. You left it uncovered. You left it to the second person to use and to draw water from the bar. Pater. So the first person is pater. Rabbi Yaakov says, no, then you're not going to be pater. Only if you gave him over the cover, then the first one's going to be pater. So the Gemara explains, what's the basis of the machlokes here? So the machlokes is as follows. Here, the Gemara will explain, we're talking about partners that are using the bar that they own together. What exactly, how do we define this partnership? Rabbi Yaakov's opinion is, yesh breda. That we say that each partner that uses the bar, so because they're partners, so what does it mean? What does this partnership mean? This Breda. Breda means that right now, when each one uses it, it retroactively clarifies that he's using his part of the bar. So therefore, Hai mididei kamamala, and Vahai mididei kamamala. Each one that's using the bar, so now, when he's using the bar, he doesn't have to he's not using the other person's bar. The pshat of partnership is not that each one comes in and uses the bar, meaning that each partner has the right to use this bar. He's using his, and he's not also using from the other person. I'm not using from the other person. When I use, I'm using from my own. When you use, you're using from your own. That's how partnership works. B'shas you use it, it's nisbarer. It clarifies that now what I'm using is mine. Right? So therefore it comes out like this, that the bar is owned 50% by him, 50% by him. So therefore, if a damage happens later to the bar, when you left the bar and you left the other person to use it, the first person is still going to be responsible for this, because this is a bar that belongs to both of them. So even if you left the other person to use it, it doesn't matter. It's still your bar. You're still going to be responsible to make sure that it's covered after the second person finishes using it, unless you mamish give him over the cover. If you give him over the cover, so then you're telling him, listen, we're partners, and I have a responsibility just like you to take care of the bar being covered, but I'm appointing you, I'm giving you over now this cover that now you're the shomer of the bar. You have the responsibility to cover the bar. Then the first partner is going to be pater. But the Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan's opinion is Ein Breida. The Rabbanan say when you have partners that use a bar together, there's no Breida, which means that each one that comes to use the bar, he's not just using his, it's not just now it's Nisbara that I'm using, and when you're using it, you're using it, and it's your part of the bar. No, each partner that uses is using this bar, which is his, and is using the other person's bar. And the way partnership works is each partner that walks into a property, or in this case, is using a bar, partnership means that I have the right to use mine and yours. And the other person also has the right to use his and the other person's. That's what partnership means. So essentially, the way partnership always works is that when you're using it, you're sort of also borrowing from the other person. Partnership is a sort of a deal that I can borrow and use from the other person. So when the first person stopped using this bar, and now he left the second person using it, the second person is using the whole bar. He's sort of borrowing from the first person the usage of the bar. So if the second person is borrowing the usage of the bar, then automatically it becomes completely the responsibility of the second person. You can't say back to the first person, oh, the bar also belongs to you. No, I left when the second person was using it. And when the second person is using it, he's using the whole bar. Then he's borrowing and he's using the whole bar. Then it's his. That's the machlokes here between his opinions.
If you say belongs to both of them, you say not. If you don't say Breda belongs to one of them.
No. Either way, it's partnership. Either way, it's partnership. But the question is, how does the partnership work? When one person uses it, is he using his? It's 50-50. And b'shas each one uses, he's using only his. Or the way partnership works is, there's no Breda. You can't say 50-50, and when I'm using only mine. When each partner uses, he's using his, and he's sort of borrowing from the other person, because there is no Breda here. So every time, they both have rights to use, but the right of the use is that each one is using his and borrowing from the other person. If you say Ein Breda, so then each one is using and borrowing from the other person, so you're not using the whole thing. And you're borrowing from the other person as well. So it becomes totally his responsibility. If you say Breda, so then each one is using their part. And I'm not borrowing from the other person. Even while I'm using it, the second person is using it, the bar still belongs to the other person. It's still a bar which is 50-50. So therefore, just because the second person is using it, it doesn't take away the responsibility of the first person to cover the bar. The only time you take away the responsibility of the first person is the first person befedish designated the second person, and he gave him the cover and said, I'm making you responsible. Then he designated him as a shomer. So then the second person becomes responsible alone. But otherwise, we say that he's using his part, but they're 50-50. So therefore they both are responsible for the damages that happen in the bar. So the Gemara, Amar Avine, va'azdo letamayo. The machlok is here regarding how partnership works, whether you say Breda or you don't say Breda. So there's also another nafkamina of this, and they follow the same opinion in another case. As we learned in the Mishnah, Masechet Nedarim, Hashutfin shenodar ana zeh mizeh. Shutfin that made a neder not to have any benefit one from another. And so the partners now, they own a chutzah together. Asurin likanis l'chutzah. So either the partners are not allowed to enter into the chutzah because you're having a no from the other person because you have partnership here. No, it's not a problem. Even though I made a neder not to have a no from him, but each one, when he enters, he's entering into his chutzah. When I walk in, so now I'm walking into my chutzah. The other person walks in, he's walking into his chutzah. So it's the same point. What are they arguing? Rabbi Yezim Yaakov says, Yesh Breda. There's a 50-50 ownership. And each one, when he walks in, so now it's nisbara that this usage is mine. And when the other person walks in, now this usage is his. They're not borrowing, they're not using from the other one at all. Each one is using their ownership. So you're not having a no from the other person. Each one is walking into their own property. Rabbanan say, Ein Breda. There is no Breda, so therefore the way partnership works is that two people have a right to use from each other. That's the concept of partnership, that they have a deal together that they can use from each other. So they're essentially sort of borrowing from each other. So you're having a nod from the other person when you walk into the chutzah. Amar Rabbi Lazar said regarding a boyer, a person sells a pit to his friend, as soon as you give over to your friend the cover of this pit, kana. So he acquires this pit. So the Gemara explains, what kind of a kinyan is this? What does it mean you give him over the cover, he's kind of, hey chidami, what are we talking about over here? Giving over a cover is not a kinyan. So what was the kinyan? Is the kinyan that he paid money for it, kesef, so then likni bekaspa. So the kinyan is kesef. You don't have to give him over the cover. Where is karka? Yeah, where is karka? Karka is usually nikne kesef shtar and chazaka. Right? So the Gemara is asking, if it was kesef, so it's kesef. If it was kainet with chazake, likni bechazake. So you kainet through chazake. Right? Chazake usually means you did something to improve the bar, something in it, so that's the chazake. Says the Gemara, la'olam bechazake. The kinyan here is that he's kainet with chazake. So then why do you have to give the cover? Because b'chazake, the halacha is uboy lemeimele leich chazek okni. The seller, in order for the chazake that the buyer does should be worth something, he has to get the permission. He has to get the clear go-ahead from the seller, and he tells him, leich chazek okni, go do your chazake and you'll acquire. Over here, what it's saying is, if the seller gives him the cover, that's the go-ahead. It's as if he told him clearly, go and make the chazakah, without even telling it to him. Giving the cover is equivalent to that. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, a similar halacha. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, a person sells his house to his friend. As soon as he gave him the key of the house, kana, he's kind of the house. So the Gemara asks, hey chidami. Over here as well, the question is, what does it mean that giving over a key is the kinyan? If he bought the house with money, again, a house is like a karka. You kind of with kesef shtar chazake. So did he buy it with kesef? So likni bekaspa. So the kinyan takes effect through the kesef. Ibe chazake, was he kind of the house with chazake? Likni bechazake. Answers the Gemara, lo'ila bechazake. The kinyan here is chazake. But you need to go ahead from the meicher that he should tell you to go do the chazake. Now the kivin shemasalei mavteyach. Once you give over the key, command the amalei lechazeke knidami. That's equivalent to the go ahead that you should go and do the kinyan chazaka and you'll be kaina.
So he has to make a chazaka after.
Yeah, exactly. He gets the key and then he has to make the chazaka, and the chazaka will work because the giving the key is like he told him, go and make the chazaka. A third halacha, similar thing. Omer Reish Lakish mishum Rav Yanai. Hamoiche eider lachavere. A person sells a flock of sheep to his friend. Kivin shemasalei mashkuchis. Once he gives over the mashkuchis, and the Gemara will explain in a moment what this mashkuchis is, kana. By giving over the mashkuchis, he'll be kaina. Again, the question is, what's this kinyan of giving over a mashkuchis? Hey chidami, what is the kinyan that's being done here? By behemoths, we usually have an option of the following kinyanim. If the kinyan that was done here is with Meshicha, so Rashi says the way kinyan Meshicha works, you buy an animal, you hit the animal, and it runs ahead of you, that's the Meshicha. So then likni b'Meshicha, you'll be kind of with Meshicha. If you're being kind of with Mesira, so Rashi explains, if this would be in a Rishus Harabim or in a place in a chatzah that doesn't belong to any of them, then Meshicha doesn't work. Meshicha only works in a simta or in a chatzah that belongs to both of them. But if you're under Rishus Harabim or something like that, you can't do Meshicha. So then it's Mesira. Mesira is different. Mesira is you give over the animal, you give over the leash or something like that. So then likni b'Mesira, you can be kind of with Mesira. As says the Gemara Lo'ilam b'Meshicha. The kinyan here that was done was the kinyan of Meshicha. But here by Meshicha as well, you can't just hit an animal and be kaina. You have to get the go ahead from the seller. He has to tell him leich Meshicha kni, go and do the Maisa kinyan of Meshicha. The kivin, the masal mashkuchis. Once he gave it over the mashkuchis, command dam leich Meshicha kni. This is equivalent to a go ahead. That's like you told him, go and do the kinyan Meshicha.
So in all these cases, if he doesn't tell him and does it on his own, it's not
no kinyan. Yeah.
No kinyan?
No.
Even though
you have to say beferish leich chazeka kni or leich Meshicha kni. That's a t'nai in the Maisa kinyan. Yeah. So the Gemara now explains my mashkuchis. What is this mashkuchis that if you give it over, then you don't have to say anything? So there's two explanations. Hacha, over here in Bavel, Tirgamu, they translated this as karkashta. This is the karkashta, which is a bell. You give over the bell of the animal. Rav Yaakov said, Ize the Ozla Bereish Adra. There was a goat that used to run ahead of the whole flock of sheep, and then the flock of sheep would know how to follow, to go after this goat. So if you're selling the whole flock, you gave over the goat, so then it's equivalent to saying Lech Hazekini, and you can be kind of the rest of the flock of sheep. And the Gemara says, Kedidorish Ahu Glilo Aleder Rav Chizde. There was this person from Golol, and Amayre, the Darshan by Rav Chizde. Kadrog is raya. So he said the following mashal. when a shepherd gets angry at his flock of sheep, on the flock of sheep, what does he do? Ovid lenagda samusa. So then the goat, which is the leader of the flock of sheep, the shepherd will blind this goat, and the goat will run into a pit, run into a ditch, and the whole flock of sheep will follow him into the ditch, and will all die over there. So this is a mashal. When the Eibishter gets angry at the Rashi says Seine Yisrael, which goes on Yidden, so then one of the ways the way the Eibishter punishes Yidden is he appoints leaders that are not good, and the leaders take them into a place where like a blind goat. This goes back to the halacha of partners. So you had the partners for one partner, the first one is using the bar, and when he's done, he actually covered the bar. Now, Sheni, the second one comes along, and he found it uncovered. So it got wormy inside, and it got uncovered. Now, the second one didn't cover it. So, that is, the second one didn't cover it. Hasheni chayev. The second one is going to be chayev. So even though the first one left it, again, what's the case over here? The first one covered it, that is, right? But it got uncovered eventually. And now when the second one comes along and he leaves it uncovered, so the second one's going to be chayev. Okay. Huh?
Just left it. It was open.
Okay, but he's a partner though. It's his responsibility to cover it. Okay, and he found it uncovered and he didn't cover it. So the second one will be chayev. At a certain point, the first one, which is also a partner, is going to be chayev. The Gemara is going to explain. At a certain point, but at a certain point, he's expected to know. Or okay, we'll see. The Gemara will say up until which point are we going to say that the first one is pater?
But if he's not shot, Breda not Breda.
No, nothing to do with Breda.
So why aren't they both higher?
No, because over here, up until a certain point, we say that the first one did cover it. He covered it. And then the fact that it got wormy inside and somehow it got uncovered, that's something that the first one's a einus. The first one doesn't know about this. He's a einus. He covered it properly. So therefore he's pater. Second one comes and finds what happened, that it got uncovered somehow. So now, and he didn't cover it, so the second one's going to be chayiv. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, Kiso Karoi, if the bar was covered properly, this is not a part, this is Bechlal, a bar, it was covered properly, the novel toich a Sheirach HaMayr Umeis, and a Sheirach HaMayr fall inside and died, so potter, you're going to be potter. So it was covered properly, but still, it got uncovered. The Gemara will explain how it got uncovered. Like Kiso Karoi, if he didn't cover the bar properly, the novel toich a Sheirach HaMayr Umeis, and a Sheirach HaMayr fall inside and died, so then Chai, he didn't cover it properly. Weiter sagt der Mishnah, Nofal lefonov mikoil akriya. A shayr or chamer fell into the bar on its face. And how did it fall into the shayr on its face? Mikoil akriya. There was a bar that was there already, but what happened is there was a worker inside the bar that was banging and expanding this bar, and a shayr walks by, and from this sound and the noise of the work being done inside the bar, so the shayr would have been careful, but it startled the shayr, and because of this, it fell into the bar on its face. Chayiv. So then you'll be chayiv. Now who's going to be chayiv? The Baal Habayr is going to be chayiv for this. The Gemara is going to explain this. Why is the one that's there banging and making the noise not the one that's responsible? La'acharov, if the Sheirach HaMayr falls in, not on his face, but it falls in on its back, Mikoil Kriya, and it's also in this case where it was banging, there was noise, potter. So then the Baal Habayr is going to be potter. This is we're going to have to wait to see in the Gemara. The next after the Gemara is going to explain why you potter, what's the difference over here. Okay. No, an ox and its vessels fall into the boir, v'nishtabru, and the shayr injures itself, and the kalim break, chamer v'kelov, and the chamer falls into the pit together with its kalim, v'niskaro, and it gets torn. So the shayr with the kalim usually means like a shayr has a yoke on it and other kinds of utensils on it. So that's why it says nishtabru. A chamer doesn't have a yoke in it; it has a saddle or something like that, and it got torn. So chayiv ala behemah. In both of these cases, you only chayiv for the behemah, but upater ala kalim. Like the halacha always is by bar, you pater on kalim. If a shayr, the shayr is a cheresh or a shaita or a cotton, which can't be careful and can't see where it's going, and it falls into the bar, so chayiv. So then the Baal Habayr is chayiv. Ben oibas Eved, or Yama that fall into a Bair in any of these cases. So even though they're Ketanim, and we can't say that they should be looking where they're going, and therefore it's not their fault, so the Bala Bair, the dog, the Pitter, should be responsible for this, but nevertheless, Potter. And this is also the Gzeres HaKosov that we learn out, Shur V'loi Odom, that a person that falls into a Bair and dies, so the Bala Bair is Potter. So the Gemara begins with the first case of the Mishnah. When the first partner covered the Bair, it got uncovered. The second one then came and left it uncovered, so the second one's going to be Chayiv. Says the Gemara, V'rishain, the first one that found this Bair, the first one that covered the Bair, and it eventually got uncovered. Ad Emes Mifter. Up until which point are we going to say that he's still going to be Potter? In other words, what the Gemara is asking is, at a certain point, he's also a partner here. At a certain point, you have to say that the first one, even though he covered it, but it got uncovered, it's his responsibility to find out about this, and therefore he should also be responsible. At what point do we say that it becomes his responsibility as well? Amarav, so Rav says, B'chdei sheyeda. As long as we know that he could know about this, which means that if the first one also came back to this place in their property and he saw that it was uncovered, so if he came back and saw that it was uncovered, just like the second one saw that it's uncovered, and he left it uncovered, so then he's going to be responsible, just like the second one that saw it. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, even if he didn't come and he didn't see, but as long as it would take to let him know when it got uncovered and to send a message to him and to let him know that it got uncovered, so then the first partner will also be responsible. The second, they're both going to be responsible. I mean, the second partner is not the one that uncovered it. It got uncovered on its own. The second partner saw it. So as long as the first partner, it's long enough that someone can go and notify the first partner, so he's also going to be responsible. Rabbi Yechanan, my third opinion, Rabbi Yechanan says, first point he says like Shmuel, as long as it takes to let the first partner know about what happened, that the bird got uncovered, but even more, you give him more time. And if he has to make a proper cover, so you have to give him time to hire workers, to cut down, to see a tree, and to cover it. That's the amount of time that you give him.
According to Shmuel, you don't have to really let him know.
What do you mean? What's this really? It says Yedihu. You have to let him know. The amount of time. Yeah, the amount of time that it takes. Yeah. The amount of time that it takes. Yeah, that's what it says.
The second guy, Rashi says,
yeah. Okay, the second one should put Shemrim over there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. The Mishnah said Kiso Karoi. If you cover the boy properly, and then and still it got uncovered, and a shayr chamayr fell in, potter. You're going to be potter for this. So the Gemara asks, what happened here? Kivin the kisol karoi. If you covered the boy properly, so hechanafel. How did the shayr chamayr fall in? Amar Rav Yitzchak. So Rav Yitzchak explains. Rav Yitzchak bar chana, that is. It got wormy from the inside. It gets wormy from the inside, and this is something that you can't even notice, that it gets wormy. Now, outside it looks like it's nice and covered, but it's very already wormy and weak, and a shayr chamayr walks over it and falls in. So you're not responsible for this. It's a neinus. You covered it properly. The Gemara is going to discuss this. Let's see. The Shaila was asked as follows. Kisoi, if you cover the bar with such a cover, it's strong enough that it can handle the weight of oxen, but it's not strong enough to handle a camel that would go over it. Okay, now what happened? Camels walked on the cover, and they weakened this cover. They didn't fall in, but they weakened it. And then also shvarim v'nafli, and now oxen came and fell into the bar v'nafli bay. What's going to be the halach in such a case? Okay, so Rashi here explains, if what happened was camels would have came and they would have fell into the bar, for sure the bala bar would be chayiv, because the case over here is you covered it with a cover that's not strong enough for camels, and the camels fell in. But if the camels did not fall in, right, what happened is they weakened it, and now the shvarim fell in. The cover that he put up is be'etzem a cover that's good enough for shvarim. So what's going to be the halach in this case? Are you going to be chayiv for the shvarim that fell in? So the Gemara explains when this would be a shaila. So Omri, they explained and said, hey chidami, what's the case over here? If this is a place where there are camels around, so then pisheyo. So he's a pisheya, even though it's only the oxen that fell in, But if there are camels around, so then you have to put a cover that's strong enough for camels. So of course, the camels weakened it, and now the shvarim fell in, but you know camels are around. And if there are no camels around, so then anasu. He knows that there's no camels in the area, so he made a cover strong enough for oxen, so there's nothing to worry about. The fact that somehow a camel got into this area, it's a ninus. Says the Gemara, the shaila is in the following case. It's a place where usually there's no camels here. It's usually a place where there's oxen, and he made a cover good enough for oxen, but sometimes there are camels that come. So do I say kiv in the asyan leprokim? Since sometimes camels come, so pesheyo. So therefore he's negligent because he should know that it could be times that camels come here. The boiler asukei is something you should be keeping in mind that the camels could be here. Or perhaps I say no, keep in the hashtem miyas leke. Since now when he's putting up the cover, there are no camels around. There's only oxen here, so therefore he put a cover strong enough for the oxen. So then, honestly, the fact that camels fell in, not the camels fell in, the fact that the camels weakened it, and then the shvarim fell in, that's an einus. Because when he made the cover, there was only shvarim around, and usually camels don't come here. And the ones that actually fell in are the shvarim, which this cover was strong enough that they should not fall in. So this is considered to be an einus. Okay, so the Gemara brings now from our Mishnah. Tashema, what did it say in our Mishnah? Kiso karoi, he covered the boy properly. An ox or a donkey fell in, and died. So potter. You'll be potter when this happens. So hey chidami, what's the case over here? If this person put up a very strong cover, it's good enough to hold oxen or to hold camels. So then, what's going to be the pshat of the Mishnah? Hey chinafel. So how did they fall in? Okay, the Gemara already before gave the answer that the Gemara is going to eventually say that what happened is it got wormy from the inside. But here the Gemara is going to first go through a whole shakel v'tarya until it comes back to that point. But right now the Gemara asks, how did it fall in if you made a perfect cover? Elalav, don't you think the case of the Mishnah must be as follows? Karoi l'shvarim, he made a cover that's good for oxen, but v'loi karoi l'gmalim. It's not a good cover for camels. And now, like the case we had before, what happened over here? Camels walked on it and weakened it. Now, what's the case over here? Why is the Mishnah saying that you potter? If it's a case where there's always camels here, so then I might potter. Why should it be potter where the camels fall in, or even if the oxen fall in? You know that there are camels here, so you're negligent. If it's a place where there are no camels here, so pshita. So then when the Mishnah says that you potter, that's obvious. Anasu. It's an einus. There's no camels around, so why should you have to make a cover strong enough to hold camels? Elalav, so don't you think the pshat in the Mishnah is like Ari Boy here? The Asyan leprokim. Sometimes camels come around. Vasu gemalim v'arua. And those camels came and weakened the cover of the bird. And then vasu shvarev v'naflu bei. And then oxen came and fell into the bird. And the ketani potter, the Mishnah says, and in such a case you potter. So over here you see alma kivin the hashta leke. Since when he made the cover, there was only oxen around. Onasu. So the fact that camels, which come once in a while, came and went on the cover, so he's considered to be a einus and he's potter. So the Gemara says, Omri, they answered, Loi. That's not the way you have to learn our Mishnah. The question we asked before, how did it open up? Loilam, the case is karoi l'shvarim, karoi l'gmalim. He made a cover that's good for both, for oxen, for camels. With the kakashil achechi nofel. Your question was, if so, then how did an ox fall into the byre? Rabbi Yitzchak bar Barchanes, as we said before, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Barchanes said, "Shesliya mitoichai." It got wormy from the inside, and there's no way the owner could notice this, and that's how it fell in, and therefore it's an einus. So it's no raya to the case of the boy we asked. Tashema, the Gemara brings an ayah from this next halacha that the Mishnah says. In the case of loiki saw karoi, he didn't cover the boy properly, and then an ox or a donkey fall in, umeis, and dies. Chayiv. So over here you will be chayiv. So what's the din that the Mishnah is saying here? Hey chidami, what's the case here? He didn't cover the bird at all, not with a proper cover, not for oxen or not for camels. Pshita, obviously he's going to be chayiv. What's the Mishnah? The chayiv. The Mishnah has to say that he's chayiv if he didn't cover it properly. Elalav, don't you think the case is that he covered it karoi l'shvarim with a cover that's good for oxen, with a loy karoi l'gemalim? It's not good for camels. So the question is, hey chidami, so what's the case over here, as we spelled out before? If it's a place there are many camels, so then he's negligent. So in such a case, if he's negligent, then obviously he's chayiv. And if there's no camels around, so then onasu. So then he's aynis. So why is the Mishnah saying that he's chayev? Elalav, don't you think the pshat in our Mishnah, when it's saying this chiddush that you're chayev when he didn't cover it properly, what the case over here is that he covered it for shvarim, but not for the gemalim, as we just said, and the da'asyan leprokim, that the gemalim come from time to time. V'asu gemalim varu, and these gemalim came and they weakened the cover of the bar. V'asu shvarim v'noflu, now the shvarim fell in. V'ketani chayev, and that's what the Mishnah is coming to teach. The Mishnah says in such a case you are chayev. Alme, if so, I see from the Mishnah, if the gemalim come around from time to time, so the balaboyer has to pay attention to that, and he has to cover it good enough for gemalim as well. And if not, your pesheya, the boy leila sukkah daite. And says the Gemara, no, that's not the pshat in our Mishnah. La'olam karoy l'shvarim, v'loy karoy l'gemalim. He covered the boyer just good enough for oxen, not good enough for camels, and shchichi gemalim. And really, this is a pshia, and because there's many camels around there, and therefore it's pashut that he should be chayiv for such a case. So you ask the question: if so, it's obvious that he's negligent, and it's pashut that he's chayiv. What's the chiddush of the Mishnah? So the Gemara answers, you're right. There's really no chiddush in this case. Aidi the nos of reisha kiso karoi. Once it says the din of the reisha, when you cover it properly, that you're going to be potter nos of seif and nami like kiso karoi. So it brings the next din also that if you didn't cover it properly, that you'll be chayiv. And over there, even though it's pashut, you're a pesheya, but it brought this din as well. This is one version of the iboye and the rayas that it tried to bring from our Mishnah. Ikidamri, there's another version though of what the iboye was. And the other version goes as follows. First of all, the Gemara addresses over here what's the halacha by the first iboye. Ha nami vade lo yiboyelon. The way we described it in the first iboye, where he covered it good enough for shvarim and not good enough for gemalim, and it's a situation where sometimes gemalim come around, that's not an iboye. Why? Because the kivin, the asyan leprokim, if once in a while camels do come around, so then pesheyahu, it's obvious that he is negligent, the iboye le'asukah daite. Because he has to keep that in mind, that sometimes camels can come here. That's not the iboye. So what was the iboye? Hachi the iboye. This was the iboye. Kiso kisui sheyachalamid bifnei shvarim. He covers it and it could stand. It's strong enough to hold oxen, but ve'eni yachalam bifnei gemalim. It can't hold camels. Ushchichi gemalim, and there are camels around, meaning that he's clearly a pesheya because there are camels around. But what ended up happening is though the camels didn't come here. And then this cover that he put, which was a good enough of a cover for oxen, the cover got wormy from the inside. So now, the fact that it got wormy from the inside, that's an ayness, and that's something that he couldn't see, couldn't notice. Mahu. What's going to be the halacha in this case? Do we say, since when he covered the bar in the beginning, he only covered it with a cover good enough for oxen and not good enough for camels, and therefore he is a pesheya. Have a pesheya nami linyan asla. So therefore we consider him to be a pesheya even for this, that it became wormy from the inside, even though for that it's really not a pshia, but nevertheless he's also going to be responsible for that. Okay, this is the Rishonim discussed this. What's exactly the svara behind this? Because in the end of the day, regarding the fact that it became wormy, it's a complete ayness. That's something that he didn't realize, didn't know, and so on. What's this svara of migu over here? So the Ramban actually says in a different place. The Ramban says that it's not like it sounds like it because he's a migu. He's pshia for that, so he's pshia for this. The Ramban says the emes is the fact that the Torah says that when you cover a bar, that's enough to pat you from any damages that happen in the bar is a chiddush HaTorah. If the Torah wouldn't have said that, you would have said that covering a bar is not good enough to pat you. How do you pat yourself from damages of a bar? You have to fill the bar. Any cover, you would say, any cover could get uncovered somehow eventually. Covering a bar is not good. The Torah says, v'loi kiso, that's a chiddush HaTorah that you could pat yourself with covering a bar. So over here, he wasn't mekayim what the Torah demanded. When he put this cover, which is not good for the camels, that's not the cover Torah says you should put to pati yourself. Because for camels which are around, it's not good. So therefore, even though later it got uncovered through an aynus, still you're going to be responsible because you didn't cover it the way Torah said. That's one svara. Or we don't say this svara. Since Pepayel, you covered it good enough for oxen, and it's the oxen that fell in, and it only got wormy, but the camels did not cause any issue here, so therefore you'll be potter. That's the shaila. There's another discussion over here. I'll just mention you the thing that Taisus brings up over here, the concept of tchilas b'pshia v'seifer bainis. We'll learn about it later in the Masechta over here. This is a case of tchilas b'pshia v'seifer bainis. When he put the cover, he's a pshia, because there was camels around and he didn't put a cover good enough for camels. Later in the end, there was an einus that it only got wormy. So in such a case, usually the halach is tchilas b'pshia v'seifer bainis is chayev. So Taisus discusses why the Gemara doesn't bring it up over here. So one could, the Taisus says this, tchilas b'pshia v'seifer bainis doesn't apply over here, because the einus that happened later is in no way a result of your pshia. When do you say tchilas b'pshia v'seifer bainis is chayev, is when the einus is connected to the pshia that you did. But over here, the fact that it got wormy inside has nothing to do with your pshia, that you didn't cover it good enough for the camels. So in such a case, we don't say that. Okay, so the Gemara now goes through the similar shakla v'taya to what we had before, trying to prove this ibaya now from the two cases in our Mishnah. So Tashama, the first case of our Mishnah, it said, Kiso karoi v'noflo techa sher chamor. You covered it properly, and the sher chamor fell in a maze and it died. Potter. So what's the case over here? V'itmar lo. So here already the Gemara brings right away what we already learned pshat over here. How did it get uncovered? Oh, Rabbi Yitzchak Bava Kama, sheisliya metoichai, that it got wormy from the inside. And that's what the Mishnah is saying in such a case, Potter. Now the question is, hey chidami, what are we talking about? Ileime karoi l'shvarim or karoi l'gmalem is the case over here that he covered it properly. It's perfectly covered for oxen, for camels. And then v'isliya metoichai, it still got wormy from the inside and you can't even notice it. If so, says the Gemara, pshita de Potter. Shouldn't that be obvious that you're Potter? Because it's an einus. What else could he do? Elalav, don't you think the pshat of the Mishnah over here is karoi l'shvarim, v'loy karoi l'gmalim? He covered it only good enough for oxen and not good enough for camels. Ushchichi gemalim. There are many camels around over here, so he's a pesheya in the beginning. And then v'isliya metoichai, but then later that wasn't the issue. Camels did not bepel come, and it got wormy from the inside. V'katani Potter, and the Mishnah here is saying that you Potter. So Alma, this approves the boy we asked. Loi amrinon migadav pesheilin gemalim have pesheilin yinasla. We're not going to say that because he didn't cover it well for the gemalim that he's going to be a pesheya for the hasla, meaning now that it got wormy, that it'll be responsible for this. And that's what the Mishnah is teaching, that even in such a case, you Potter. The Gemara says loi. There's no raya from a Mishnah. Loi lo. We can go back to how we originally wanted to say. The case of is karoi l'gmalim, karoi l'shvarim. He covered this bar perfectly for everything. And v'isliya mitoichai. But then what ended up happening is it got wormy from the inside, and that's how the sher chamor fell in. V'de kakashiloch. You're asking the question, ki yisliya, my have a leila mev. You're asking that it's poshit. There's nothing else that he could have done if it got wormy from the inside. It's a total linus. Says the Gemara, no, it's not so poshit. Because mao deteme, because I would think to say, even when it gets wormy from the inside, you should be responsible. Why? Because you buy a leila mezel umenakish alei. You're the owner of this bar, you cover it. Every once in a while, you have to bang on this cover, you have to test it to see that the cover is still a good cover. I would think you'll be chayiv for this. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Once you cover it with a proper cover, you don't have to come back every once in a while to bang in it to make sure that it didn't get wormy from the inside. Tashema. Huh? What?
In other words, V'leichiso means that you don't have to check it out.
But he covered it here. This is the Reish of the Mishnah.
But no, I'm just saying in the concept of V'leichiso.
Yeah.
The says gives you a heter. What you said, the Rambam.
Yeah.
He has to cover it. As
right.
long as he covers it once, that's enough.
That's it. Yeah. Once he covers it, he doesn't have to come and test it out again. That's the chiddush of the Torah. Yeah, it's part of the chiddush of the Torah. Toshema, the Gemara tries to bring a raya from the next case of the Mishnah, as we had before. Like you saw karoi, if he did not cover it properly, so then you will be chayiv. So hey chidami, what's the Mishnah? What's the chiddush that it's saying chayiv? If you would read it simply, like karoi l'shvarim, like karoi l'gemalim, we didn't cover it properly at all. What's the chiddush that you chayiv? Elalav, don't you think the case is as follows? Karoi l'shvarim, v'loy karoi l'gemalim. And then, so if you didn't cover it properly for gemalim, so v'idishchichi gemalim pesheyahu. If there's gemalim around, then that's why it fell in. So he's a pesheya. So it's still going to be pashit that he's going to be chayiv. V'iduloi shchichi gemalim, and if there's no camels around, so then honest. So then you wouldn't be chayiv because then it's a total linus. So elalav, don't you think the case over here is like the boy that we had? The shchichi gemalim. There are gemalim around, but what ended up happening is v'isliya mitoichai. The reason why the share fell in is, or the gamel fell in, is not because already before it got wormy on the inside. The Katani Chayev, and we say that he's Chayev even though the reason why it got uncovered is because of the worm inside. Alma Amrina Migadav Peshelin, Gemalam of Peshelin Asla. Once it was a Peshe in the beginning for not covering it proper for Gemalim, even though later that's not the reason why a behemoth fell in over here. But still I say that he's a Peshe because it got wormy as well. That's the Chiddush of our Mishnah, the Chayev. So Amri, over here as well, the Gemara answers the same answer, similar answer to what we said before, Loi. We don't have to say that this is the case. Loilam, Karoy, L'Shvarim, V'loi Karoy, L'Gmalim. He covered it well enough for Shvarim and not for Gemalim. Ushchichi Gemalim. And there are Gemalim around. So he's a Pesheya. V'asu Gemalim v'aru. Gemalim came and weakened this bird. V'asu Shvarim v'naflu bei. And the oxen came in and fell in. And so now, the kakashiloch pshite pesheyu. And the question that you asked is, in such a case, because Gemalim are around, and you have to expect that to happen. So if that ends up happening, it's pashit that you're a pesheya and you should be chayev. What's the chiddush of a mishnah? The answer is, well, like we said before, the sakano chiddush here. But I did the nosav reisha kiso karoi nosav sefer nami like kiso. It brings the case of the reisha where there is a chiddush when he covered it properly. So it brings the case of the sefer also when he didn't cover it properly, even though in this case there is really no chiddush. Now the Gemara brings from a Braisa, and this is actually a raya to this Ibaya here. Tashemad, the Braisa says, if the bird that you dug on Shusarabim, a shar which is a cheresh or a shaitan, a cotton falls into it. Now the shar, which is a cheresh shaitan, the cotton, it walks along its way, and it can't pay attention to where it's going. So therefore, it ends up falling inside. So you can't blame the shar or the bala shar for falling inside of here. The bala bird is high for this. Or also a suma, share that's blind, or mahalach balayla, if the share was walking at night. So in all these cases, you'll be chayiv. However, pikeyach, if the share is a normal, sane share, or mahalach bayayim, and it's walking by day, potter. Because then if the share, just normal share, walks into the bar, then the balabar is going to be potter. Because this is something that the share could see where it's going. And it didn't look where it's going, and it fell in, so that's not the fault of the balabar. But the question now is, you're making such a distinction, depends what kind of shirt it is. But v'amai, why should you say that you should be, why should you say over here that you should be potter? If you're saying that if a shirt which is a cheresh, and it can't be expected to know where it's going. And for that, you are a Pesheya. You're digging a bird in Shusarabim, you know that there are certain Shvarim that could fall in, and for that you are a Pesheya. So, if so, you should be a Pesheya also for the Shari that's a Pikeyach as well, and you should be Chayi for this as well. Elalav Shmam, so you see from here, we don't say this Svara. Lo yamrinan migu. We don't say this migu, meaning if whatever your negligence was for, that's what you're chayiv, and whatever you were not negligent for, you're going to be potter. A shar which is a pikeyach, that's not your negligence. That's the shar has to see where it's going. The same thing over here, b'negei tahari baya. When you cover it, that it's good enough for shvarim and it's not good enough for gemalim, so, and then it got wormy from the inside. So because later it got wormy, we're not going to say because you were a pesheya for gemalim, you're going to be chayiv. No. Now it got wormy, and for this, I'm not responsible, so he's not going to be responsible. Shmami, this is a clear ayah to this ibaya.